immigration policy over at the County Board of Commissioners. It is so good to be a part of Washtenaw County, Ann Arbor, a place where we believe that every resident of our community is a welcome resident. And I am so grateful to all of you for coming out today to show your solidarity. We are so proud to have so many leaders with us today, and so grateful to all of you. We didn't want to put together just another rally, though. We didn't want you to just come cheer and yell at a building, so we have causes today. And we are going to let you know about those throughout the course of this rally. Our first one is for the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center. MIRC is an outstanding asset in our community. They defend our immigrant community from legal attacks up and down the line, and we're hoping that today you will take a few minutes of time and put a few dollars behind MIRC's Defense Fund for Children. So that's a big part of our work today, hopefully your work today as well. I want to share some logistical notes because it's hot out here, right? First, there is a medic location in Mason Hall. If you're feeling a little woozy, if you need a little water, something like that, please take care of yourself. We don't want anyone coming to any harm out here. The heat index is high. Second, we're also going to say thank you to numerous businesses throughout the community who are donating their proceeds today to MIRC. First of those is Silvio's Organic Ristorante Pizzeria on 715 North University. Pyology Pizzeria on Liberty Street. Grizzly Peak Brewing. And Blom Meatworks. Be sure to patronize those businesses who are supporting us today as well. Oh, the medic is moved. They're in Angel Hall today. Thank you for that update.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to kick off today with our first speakers from MIRC. So Sarah Schoettle and Rebecca Ontiveros Chavez, please join me up at the stage. Rebecca is our community's lead attorney defending children. So when families face separation issues, whether that is because of the treachery of our president and this administration, or simply because of traditional and unfortunate practices at ICE, when families are separated, they know that they can turn to MIRC and to Rebecca for help. And Sarah, we welcomed Sarah about 2 years ago to Washtenaw County as our lead attorney on all of our local immigration issues. These two women are out there on the ground doing the work every single day. These two women are where your dollars are going to go to MIRC today. If you make a donation, you're going to support their advocacy, their legal defense work, their efforts to make our community the best place that the world should expect. Rebecca, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us.
Morning, everyone. Michigan Immigrant Rights Center is incredibly thankful for your support for our clients and for us as we try to assist them in this environment. As Conan mentioned, I'm Sarah Schoettle. I'm an attorney at the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center, and I work with families in Washtenaw County who are going through the immigration system, just trying to stay together here in the United States.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Rebecca Ontiveros, and I'm an attorney at the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center as well. I represent the children and youth who are in deportation proceedings. These are some of the questions that I have to ask them. What's your date of birth? What's your full name? Are you a citizen or national of the United States? Where are you a citizen and national of? When did you cross the border? And where? When? Do you want to return with mom and dad? Or do you want... I will start again. Can you hear me better now? Okay, I will start again. Everyone, I'm sorry if you're gonna have to, I'm gonna have to repeat this, but my name is Maricella Castillo-Mackenzie, and I'm an attorney at the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center. I represent children and youth who are in deportation proceedings. So what that means is I've represented in a year, I've represented over 230 kids in immigration court or in their petitions or in applications to stay here in the US. In any given week, I go to immigration court with 5 to 15 kids, and we go in front of the judge, and these are some of the questions that I have to ask them. What is your date of birth? What is your full name? Are you a citizen of the United States? Where are you a citizen and national of? Where did you cross the border? Who did you come with? Do you want to go back with mom and dad? Do you want to stay? Some of the kids that I have to ask these questions to, the youngest is 2 years old, that I've personally represented. The child can't even put their feet on the ground, yet they're expected to answer some of these questions. Some of them are even nonverbal. They won't even talk to me. And I have to draw pictures with them. Do you want to go with mom, dad? Stay. It's traumatizing for them. Sometimes they start crying in front of me. And if it is that they want to go back with mom and dad, I get a hug afterward. And that's really nice. But what they've gone through and the trauma that they endure is something that will carry on with them for the rest of their lives. Like them, like all the children and youth that I represent, I am an immigrant as well. I came to the United States when I was a toddler. I was eligible to become a permanent resident, and 4 years ago I became a citizen of the United States. Now, I realize that I am incredibly lucky because not everyone becomes eligible for any form of immigration relief. And I do this work because I can deeply relate to these kids, and I know that they need someone and an advocate to represent them and understand them and fight for their rights. There are some kids who I see in court who don't have an attorney. The kids that we represent are in the foster care system here in Michigan. There are two groups of kids that I'm talking about. One are the children that have been separated from their parents at the border. These are the little ones, the toddlers, the kids who just simply, most of the time, just want to go back with mom and dad. Then there are the children who are a little bit older, who have come ahead of their parents or fleeing persecution or fleeing something from their own country and are wishing to stay here in the US. All of these kids are here in the foster care system here in Michigan who we represent. And it's created a lot of complexity because they're two groups of kids who have very different needs. But none of them have their parents, and they're here alone and stuck in the foster care system, sometimes with people who can't speak their language if they're from a country where they speak an indigenous dialect. It's really traumatizing for them, and it creates a lot of, sorry, I'm getting a little emotional because it's really hard working with these kids.
You're allowed.
Thank you. Thank you. They're here all alone, and none of them should be demonized.
As Rebecca mentioned, it's incredibly difficult working with these children. As lawyers, these are our clients. These are the children that we look to represent, but often they're infants, they're toddlers, they're little kids who can't even tell us why they came to the United States. They can't tell us if someone's hurting them. They can't tell us if they're fleeing persecution. It's been incredibly difficult to find out their stories, and our staff has worked very hard to connect with their parents that were separated from them, who are still often in the border jails. The government has failed to provide access to those parents for their children and for us to find out what their children need. Even once we know these children's stories, they're facing an incredibly long fight ahead. immigration law is incredibly complex and incredibly stacked against these children, and they're facing a fight of months or even years ahead to be able to remain in the US, and there's no plan for how they're going to reunite with their parents.
The executive order that was put into place, I do want to mention it, does not end family separation. It simply calls for indefinite, large-scale family detention, and that is unacceptable. This last week, a case, Miss L, gave us a little bit of hope. This case requires that the government reunify children who are under 5 years old with their parents within 14 days, and all other children within 30 days. It also requires that they initiate contact with their parents in the detention center in the borders. So we will be carefully counting all of the days till these kids are reunified with their families. We are also supporting Senate Bill 3036 in the Senate. This is the Keep the Family Together Act, and it bans family separation except in cases where there is evidence that the children have been abused or are being trafficked. Please keep the pressure on your legislators and support these bills.
Please don't forget that family separation is the daily lived experience for undocumented communities in the United States, as well as all the communities in the United States who are targeted for mass incarceration. It's the story of parents who are not going to be able to watch their children grow up because they're torn apart by deportation. It's the story of children who come home from school to find that their parents have been detained by immigration authorities. And it's the stories of numerous people who are permanently barred from re-entering the US just to rejoin their families. Please keep listening to these communities, sharing their stories, and keep fighting for all of them. Because of your support, the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center is able to walk with these clients and accompany them no matter how long the journey to justice is going to take.
Thank you everyone for your support.
Aren't they amazing? This work that they do is so important. And you can help continue this work right now. There's a really easy way to do it. You can donate to the MIRC Children Legal Defense Fund right from your cell phone. Hey, thank you for that. So here's how you do it. Text reunification to 41444. That's reunification 41444. Easy way to donate. You can also go right to the Facebook page for this event or to MIRC's Facebook page. There are donation options there as well. Please help us continue this incredibly important work. One more thank you for Rebecca and Sarah. Our next speaker has an incredible story to tell. Irene Butter. All right, Irene is a little bit famous around here. Irene is not just a long-standing peace activist. She has a deep personal story that motivates her work. She is a Holocaust survivor, and she's a professor emeritus here at the School of Public Health. For several decades now, she has talked to students about her World War II experiences, stressing the importance of never be a bystander and that one person can make a difference. We're going to hear Irene's story today. Irene, welcome. Thank you. Irene is joined today by Maricella Smith. Maricella is the executive director of the Corner Health Center, one of the places that in our community we rely upon to make sure that children and families can get the care that they need. Thank you for joining us today as well, Maricella.
here. Yeah. Yeah. Good morning. Thank you all for being here today at this very important event, even though it is a scorching hot summer day. We are here to raise our moral voices against separation and incarceration of children. Children, the most vulnerable group in our population. I grew up as a Jewish child in Nazi-occupied Europe. I survived 2 concentration camps, and it is unbelievable to me that in this day and age, and in this country, that children are kidnapped from their parents, held in detention centers, and not knowing whether they will ever see their parents again. It was more than 70 years ago that I was separated from my family, and I have never forgotten the pain, the anxiety, and the fear that was associated with this separation. As part of a prisoner exchange, we were on a train from concentration camp Bergen-Belsen. My father died on this train from malnutrition and brutal beating. 2 days later, my mother, my brother, and I arrived in Switzerland. They were so sick that they were hospitalized immediately upon arrival. I was not so sick, and I was not allowed to stay with them. I was deported to a refugee camp in Algiers, North Africa. I was barely 14 years old. The war had not ended, and there was no mail. And for several months, I did not know whether my mother and my brother were still alive. We were in separate continents. They were in Europe, and I was in Africa. And there was no plan for reunification. After all these years, I have not been able to forget the loneliness and the fear associated with that period. 1.5 years passed before I saw my mother and my brother again. That's my story. Now, knowing that hundreds of vulnerable children are subjected to this extreme trauma, it is totally devastating and heartbreaking for me. We are here today because we all have a social conscience and recognize that all of us are responsible for each other. We cannot be bystanders. And we cannot keep silence. It is our human duty to resist policies and government agencies that are responsible for this inhumane practice of separating children. We must do everything we can to support organizations that can physically and legally protect, comfort, and reunite the families. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Irene. Bless you and the work that you do. You know, as an elected official, I get the opportunity to work with some pretty incredible people who also represent parts of our community. We're joined today by our mayor, Christopher Taylor. Oh, sure. And they're all going to come up. And State Representative Donna Lisinski. We are really lucky to have such strong fighters, but none stronger than our Congresswoman, Debbie Dingell. That's right. Debbie's in the fight for us here in Michigan every day. She's defending us against the Trump administration in Washington, D.C. She is the toughest person defending our rights to be a welcoming community. Thank you, Debbie, and welcome today. Oh, and I should say, Linh Song, who is on our agenda. Lynn, come on up. We're going to get you in. She's on our library board and elected official here in Washtenaw as well.
As is Conan. So that's any other elected official we didn't see. It's hot, so we don't want to keep you all out here forever, but we stand in solidarity with all of you and Irene and every single family that has had their child ripped apart. We thank the organizers of this today. We thank Conan for being here, and I thank every one of you for coming and standing with communities across the country, saying what you are doing is not the core values of the United States of America. I wrote my comments out because I didn't want to get too worked up or go too long. But you can tell I'm already worked up. And I'm going to stay worked up until every child is reunited with their families. You know what's happening in this country right now? It's challenging who we are as Americans. We are standing here today as a community and with communities across the country, defending the most fundamental pillars of our Constitution. And we will not let them win these attacks. Who are we as a nation? Is ripping children from their parents and tearing apart families who we are? No. Telling women escaping violence, domestic abuse, sexual assaults, we don't care? Is that who we are? No. Do we tell the desperate, escaping people that are escaping famines, wars, natural disasters, diseases, poverty, political oppression, tough luck? No. Many who we are seeing, and we need to, I want to say something today. I'm going to say two things as I go off script already. Is that one, we cannot let people define what we are standing up for. We will define what we are standing up for. This president is going to try to take all of these rallies and say, we don't want to keep our nation safe. We do want to keep our nation safe and our children safe. And I spent 2 hours at the farmer's market before I came here today. And even when I got here, people said to me, they're worried, they're giving up hope. If we give up hope, he wins. We must never, ever, ever, ever give up. risked their lives. They've been exploited. They've faced extreme weather conditions. And they've been sustained only by the hope that they might somehow find a better life. We are better than this, and that is why we are standing up today. Our country is being divided by fear and hatred, and it's threatening the democracy that we all love. I've been thinking a lot about the nuns. I'm even wearing my good girl white dress today because I've thought about them all week. But those nuns of my childhood not only spoke to me of community, but they demonstrated it. They helped me learn the distinction between rules and to stand up for values, the responsibilities that we have to each other, and these nuns taught me more than anything the importance of action. I will never forget what those nuns taught me, to stand up for what's right and to not be afraid to speak the truth. We are all human beings coming from the same Creator and equally deserving of respect, opportunity, and hope. You know, I want to scream from rooftops. I guess I probably am. I want to march, I want to debate, and I want to fight and do 1,000 things. Because the abhorrent, reprehensible, dehumanizing, offensive, scary policies of this administration should frighten every single American. We cannot say it's not my problem. It's not my community. What difference can I make anyway? We do make a difference together. Today, the New York Times editorial wrote, forcibly separating children from their parents is not about deterrence or legal technicalities of law or illegal immigration or anything else that President Trump has claimed to justify his latest and most odious outrage. It's about cruelty, parallel to some of the most barbarous ages in our history, and totally unworthy of a civilized nation to borrow from the Declaration of Independence. America, where is our humanity, empathy, and compassion? Today, we are bringing particular attention to the separation of families who've been given that impossible choice of turning back or being detained and separated from their children. While this nation has made very serious mistakes in its history, to quote the New York Times again, it has been the tradition in American law, culture, and practice to defend the weak, to welcome the other, to give refuge to the oppressed, or to refuse to acquiesce when a government acts against basic dictates of conscience. I'm going to give you a few more facts and I'm going to close. But, you know, the administration's claimed to put an end to this policy. I don't believe it. They've got too many unanswered questions. And then we saw the latest last night. Well, they're going to keep people beyond 20 years. We never know what they're going to say hour to hour. And we don't know what the truth is. We had all the women members sent a letter asking a lot of questions. Among the questions we all need to ask is, okay, you're keeping them together. Does that mean you're keeping families in cages? What's the plan to reunify these 2,500 children separated from their parents? Photos and details by the administration are only showing men and boys. Where are the women and the girls? There are a lot more questions, and it's hot. But we will not let up until we get the answers and these families are reunified. Separating families is a symbol of a larger problem. And while we're here today talking about these families, I don't want to forget the DACA kids. They need our help too. It's time to put aside partisan differences. If they would bring a bill to the floor, I'm telling you, the votes are there. We need to come to the table and work it out for all of these families. We need to provide permanent protection for our dreamers and permanent family separations. Make it easier to immigrate to this country. And provide a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants who passed a background check and have paid taxes. And I want to say one more thing. I was listening to Irene. I want to tell you what else is happening. In Dearborn, the first time this happened was last January. I was in a school, and an 8-year-old girl came up to me and started hugging and crying. And she said to me, "I'm afraid they're going to come knock on my door in the middle of..." This is an American citizen, by the way. This is a child born in this country. "And I'm afraid they're going to rip my family out of the house in the middle of the night and we'll never be seen again." That's America today. And that wasn't the first time I heard the story. When I kept hearing it over and over, I went to the school superintendent. And he said, "This is what the kids are talking about in school. This is America. Freedom of religion is the most fundamental pillar of our Constitution. And the Muslim ban this week is unacceptable, and we must protect the Supreme Court." So I'm going to close with a prayer the nuns taught me, but it's also part of a prayer from St. Paul's Cathedral. The nuns demonstrated to me that no one should be a stranger to us. They taught me to look with mercy on those who are fleeing from danger, to watch over migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers, those separated from their loved ones, and those who are lost, and those who have been exiled from their homes. To ask God to bring them safely to a place where they long to be, and to always show kindness to strangers and those in need. To support and help the work of those seeking to bring them relief. To join with others to awaken compassion and urgency in government. And all whose decisions can make a difference. And to remember that our Lord Jesus Christ was a refugee and a migrant who traveled to another land searching for a home.
Ladies and gentlemen, our Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. Debbie, thank you for joining us. Thank you also to State Representative Donna Lisinski, our Mayor, Christopher Taylor, State Representative Youssef Rabi, Ann Arbor District Library Trustee Linh Song, and Ann Arbor School Board Member Jeff Gaynor. Thank you all for your leadership. One moment. Thank you for that indulgence. So, as I mentioned earlier, it's not just about raising our voices today, it's about taking action. And one of the actions that we want you to take, if you haven't already, is register to vote. Throughout the crowd today, and at a table back here, there are people who are certified by the clerk's office to register you to vote. If you are not registered yourself, if you're standing next to somebody who's not registered to vote, please make sure that you vote and participate in our electoral system. We have big elections, important elections coming up in August and November of this year. Again, our other major action for the day is to support MIRC's Legal Defense Fund for Children. You can do that by texting today. Text reunification to 41444. Reunification 41444, or donate online at the Facebook event for today, for this event, or at MIRC's website. Our next speaker is himself an undocumented immigrant, Javier Contreras Uribe. Did I do that well enough? I tried this 10 times with you. Javier Contreras Uribe. Javier is a graduate of the engineering school here at the University of Michigan and a graduate of Skyline High School here in Ann Arbor. When Javier was a high school student, he took the role of an activist at some risk to himself and advocated for children who are undocumented to receive in-state tuition to our public universities. He carried on his activism when he came to the University of Michigan and fought for the rights of DACA recipients to get driver's licenses. He is one of those people who is putting himself at risk to do the good work of making our community welcoming every day. And we welcome you, Javier.
So it's gonna be a little hard to follow up with that speech, but all right. So I've been in this country for 19 years, and I've been lucky enough to have both my parents and my brothers with me the entire time. Some of my friends in the community have not been so fortunate. Lourdes Salazar and her family come to mind when I think about those affected by the recent spike in raids and the overall flaws in our current immigration system. This current administration has made life a living hell for our community, separating families, locking children up in detention centers, and toying with the future of DACA recipients. Hearing the sound bites of the children begging for their mom and dad broke my heart. That could have so easily been me when I was 4 years old. It is scary as an adult to even drive past a Border Patrol unit in Detroit. I can't even fathom the kind of trauma they are facing. Ann Arbor is a sanctuary city that prides itself in being immigrant friendly. This is great, but it also places a microscope on our city to those that think we have something to hide. The raid that took place at Savas this time last year was unacceptable. ICE agents had the audacity to enjoy a meal there seconds before detaining the hands that prepared it. We need more business owners like Hede, I hope I said that right, Batu, owner of Cafe Zola, that denied ICE agents entry into their kitchen. Memos and statements of how you support our community are all good and well, but it's action like Hide's that make the difference. The separations of family must not only stop at the border, but also in Ohio, Michigan, New York, and so many other states. ICE must be abolished. If this seems like a radical, out-of-bounds idea to you, it's not. This agency is so consumed by deportation that it ruins the hope for sensible and humane immigration policies. We need more individuals like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in every state across the country, and especially in Michigan. These raids are nothing new to our community. This took place under the Obama administration and many administrations before him. Organizations like Wicker are crucial to helping combat this issue, but more must be done. I have gone 19 years without losing my family, and now I am more scared than ever for that to happen with everything going on. I am glad to see everyone here today, but it is so important that you are also here in times of crisis when a member of our community is detained and they are in removal proceedings. This administration makes it nearly impossible to halt a deportation and stop the separation of families. We need all the support we can get. Thank you for letting me speak today. One last thing. I always get like super nervous giving speeches, and it always kind of helps that like I remind myself that like you guys are my community, and by the end of it, I feel a lot better. Thank you.
Such an amazing story, Javier. Thank you so much. We're going to welcome now Dr. Maricella Castillo-Mackenzie. Oh, she's got fans! Dr. Castillo-Mackenzie was born and raised in Mexico City. She's a family physician and an assistant professor here at U of M. She is passionate about providing care to the Hispanic community, and she's seen firsthand the effects of our president's immigration policies on families and the terrible effects they've had on public and personal health. Dr. Castillo-Mackenzie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Hello. Hola. Imagine, just for a moment, how would you feel if you were forced to leave your extended family, your food, your language, your culture, your house, and your identity? How would you feel if you were to wake up in the middle of the night in a place that you don't know, without your loved ones? It's cold and alone. As an immigrant, I know firsthand what it is to leave your birth country behind and taking a chance to improve your life. I also became a citizen 4 years ago. Following my passion and working with immigrant families, I've learned that family is all they have when they decide to leave their birth country. It is one of the hardest things they have to go through, and it represents a huge physical, emotional, and financial sacrifice for them, especially when children are involved. It is well known that the family significantly impacts health. Children are emotionally attached to their parents, and a child's sense of safety depends on that relationship. Studies have shown that when children are separated from their parents, it is detrimental to their physical and mental health. And even after children are reunited with their parents, the effects of their time apart may continue to put them at risk for health and developmental problems, including higher risk for chronic diseases and early mortality in adulthood. These children feel that they were left behind, and in consequence will experience higher rates of post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, depression, and increased aggression. They are nearly twice as likely to be arrested as adults, and they are more likely to exhibit risky behaviors such as smoking, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, and gambling. Our leaders' actions are causing irreversible damage to these families, especially to these children, and will take a lifetime to undo. These children are not guilty for their parents' actions. They're just children. Our leaders need empathy and understanding of why these families are leaving their birth countries. These children do not understand why they are separated from their parents, and they just want to go back with the people they love and make them feel safe. We must continue advocating for these families' reunification and be the voice for those who don't have one. Today and every day, we care, and families belong together no matter where they are from. Thank you.
Dr. Castillo-Mackenzie, thank you so much. You're doing the hard work every day and reminding us how important every small action is to every small child. Thank you. It's a real delight to welcome Linh Song back to the stage. Linh, are you bringing your family? Do you want to come up here?
I'll bring them back.
Okay. Gracious, I'm discombobulated, I apologize. So, as I mentioned earlier, Linh is an elected official here in Washtenaw County serving on the District Library Board, but she is also a social worker. She taught international social work here at U of M and led Ethica, an anti-trafficking into adoption organization working on behalf of children and birth families contesting adoption fraud. She is also a child of refugees herself from Southeast Asia who were welcomed to this country more than 40 years ago. Linh, thank you for sharing your story today.
For about 6 years, I worked with an organization whose mission was to promote ethical adoptions by fighting adoption fraud, particularly trafficking of children into international and domestic adoptions. Ethica worked intensely on adoption reform, insisting that we preserve the rights of every party involved, first parents, adoptees, and adoptive parents equally. That meant fighting back against ideas that Native and non-white children couldn't be cared for by Native and non-white parents. This meant fighting against the idea that poor children are better off with wealthier families. This meant committing to international treaties that required, unless in cases of abuse, reunification before institutionalization. This meant that adoptive parents had to fight for the rights of first parents and children before they become adoptees. Why? Because no adoptive parent wants to be haunted by the question, was I complicit in breaking one family to build mine? My organization had small victories, from insisting that UNICEF clarify its orphan statement to getting convictions of adoption agency owners who were buying and selling children. But none of us would have ever imagined that our own government would traffic children here again. We are supposed to be a country that advances ideals like liberty, freedom, and justice. We are supposed to have learned historical lessons from forcing Native children into boarding schools, profiting from the sale of slave children, and imprisoning Japanese children and their families. We are once again allowing ourselves to be convinced that new Americans, or rather non-white Americans, are a threat, an infestation. I'm here to remind everyone that we are capable of fighting the fear that refugees and asylum seekers are unwelcome strangers. My work has been inspired by my own family's experiences as new Americans. My parents are here with me today. My father was a medevac pilot during the Vietnam War and who escaped the last day of Saigon. My mother was a refugee from Laos who escaped the Pathet Lao, the communists, when they took over in 1976. For the past couple of weeks, we've been talking about children being separated at our southern border. My mother told me, when I escaped Laos, we crossed the Mekong River under gunfire. And then we were thrown into a Thai prison camp. Even the Thai guards didn't separate my sister from her 5 children, including a 3-month-old infant. Shouldn't the American government be more humane than a Thai prison camp? Yes. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, over 500,000 Southeast Asian refugees fled to the US. At the time, over 70% of Americans did not want refugees here. But President Ford and Carter worked closely with religious organizations and funded resettlement programs. They established an important precedent of what's possible when we can overcome xenophobia and welcome refugees in our communities. My parents are not strangers. They were janitors and restaurant workers, and decades later, engineers and graduates of U of M. They are colleagues, neighbors, volunteers, adoptive parents, taxpayers, and voters. My parents celebrate and embody every American ideal I can think of, but it shouldn't take 43 years for Americans to realize that the families and children that we see in cages now are our future community and family members. The children that our government is traumatizing now will one day stand here as I stand before you, demanding justice. Until then, I hope that all the parents I see here will look back at your own immigration histories, talk with your families, and remember what you and your churches did to help refugees and immigrants like my family. Advocate for separated children as you did for them. Demand that our political leaders stop exploiting vulnerable children for political purposes and threatening to place them into adoption. Vote for compassionate and visionary leaders. We must reclaim our country's integrity and humanity.
Amen.
Thank you.
Stories like that just make your heart explode, right? Oh, thank you, Lynn. And thank you, your family, for joining us. That's fantastic. Thank you, Doug, the other family members. Okay, this is really, really super important. Grab your water bottles. Put some liquid inside of you. Even if you are just standing here, you're sweating, you're dehydrating, we want to make sure, message from the medics, that doesn't cause any deleterious effects. So cheers to all of you.
Get the signer some water.
Oh my goodness, yes. Can someone bring our signer some water?
Please. You're welcome.
Everyone, this is Gina Descola. That was really inopportune. I'm sorry, Gina. I'm going to pause for 30 seconds and let her have a drink of water. Thank you, Gina. I also wanted to say hi to Jason Morgan, fellow county commissioner who's out in the crowd somewhere. Jason, thank you for joining us today. And briefly to Mike Steinberg from the ACLU. Mike, wave and say hi. Mike is Michigan's legal director for the ACLU, and as you probably know, the ACLU led the class action that resulted in a unification order. All families must be reunified within 30 days. Thank you to the ACLU for your work. Mike wanted me to assure you, though, that the court actions only go so far. It is our action. It is community organizing. The courts will follow the people. So us being here today is what makes his work possible. Our next speaker, Dr. Ahmad Zubairi. Dr. Zubairi? Dr. Zubairi is a first-generation Muslim immigrant who is practicing child psychology. He is also part of two community organizations here, Muslim Social Services and American Muslim Neighbor. Thank you very much, Dr. Zubairi, for joining us today.
As Muslims we say, Assalamu alaikum, which means peace be upon you. It's an honor to be here, especially seeing all these people in scorching heat. But I think the more hot days like this, ice will melt soon. I came to this country roughly 26 years ago and never imagined I will be standing in the United States of America trying to protect the right of families to stay united. I have to confess that this is the very first time I am attending a rally, let alone speak in one. And I asked myself a few days ago, why is that? And I am living in Arbor, and I look at trees, and I'll tell you, immigrants are like trees. When you plant a tree, it needs a conducive soil, sun, water, care, and then it gets into a big tree that gives you shade, protects the environment, and gives to the community. And that's how immigrants are, and sometimes it takes time to get to that level. When I started training as a child psychiatrist 20 years ago, I came across a code that has been a guiding principle for me. And the quote was, a child may not remember what you tell them, but they will always remember how you make them feel. Nothing can be far from truth with that code. And in psychiatric research, it's very clear the most important child developmental process is attachment and bonding. And when it gets disrupted, it affects people significantly. It affects their physical development, emotional development, cognitive development. And unfortunately, research shows sometimes these things can last generations. These little kids don't know borders, they don't know countries, they don't know boundaries. Only thing they know is the place which gives them love, warmth, safety, and security, and that's their parents' lap. When we take away that, the consequences are significant. When, as Muslim Americans, we have gone through a lot over the last 20 years in terms of misunderstanding about the religion of Islam and the difficulty of being accepted. As we have these difficult times, we try to reflect back on what will help us get through that. And we look at mutually shared values between Muslims and American values. The values to fight for justice, the values to fight for the people who can't stand for themselves. We also reflect back on historical parallels, whether it was Puritans coming to North America for religious freedom, or Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, migrating from Mecca to Medina for religious freedom. When he arrived in Medina, the first thing he did was not only to keep the families together, he also made sure to develop a buddy system where an immigrant family was buddied up with the native family. And these native people give half of their wealth to the immigrant families and help them establish. Just like all of you are standing here to support people you don't even know. When we look at stories in Quran, we look at Moses being separated from his mother as an infant, or Jacob losing Joseph as a young child, and God miraculously working and getting them back together, sending us a clear signal, families belong together. Finally, I just want to tell my Hispanic friends, ustedes no están solo, estamos contigo. Vamos a luchar juntos por nuestros derechos. Gracias, thank you.
Dr. Zubairi, if this is your first time, it does not show. Let's give a shout out to the folks who brought us here today, our event co-sponsors, the Washtenaw Interfaith Coalition for Immigrant Rights. Thank you, Wicker. The Interfaith Council for Peace and Justice. ICPJ is led by Chuck Warpahowski, who's one of our city council members. Thank you, Chuck. And Timmy Global Health. It's great to have the leadership of those organizations supporting this cause today. Our next speaker is the Reverend Deborah Dean-Ware. Reverend Dean-Ware, thank you for joining us today. Reverend Dean-Ware is the pastor of the Church of the Good Shepherd, United Church of Christ here in Ann Arbor. The Church of the Good Shepherd is a multiracial, LGBTQ affirming Christian congregation that has been fighting for justice for more than 60 years. Importantly, the church is a level 1 host sanctuary church.